Hello everyone. I hope everyone has had a great week. Earlier in the week, trading was not super phenomenal. We had quite a bit of balance and kind of just waiting for this FOMC minutes as well as NVDA earnings coming out yesterday on Wednesday. Once that event occurred, we did see some movement in the market, especially today during our regular trading session on Thursday. We have quite an interesting close today. Some good areas of both above and below for trades to and from. So we'll go over kind of some of our structure here, what we're looking at, and some potential pathing into tomorrow, Friday, as well as early next week. So starting off, I want to just take a look and highlight our kind of two main areas of interest here out of this area. Our current close from Thursday here is kind of in the middle of no man's land. We did see our full RTH gap fill from our initial kind of Wednesday push with our FOMC adding the catalyst last week, and then obviously just bounced above. So two main areas of balance here. Up into our previous all-time highs towards 53.30 to 33 is your primary balance to the upside. We have a 3-day balance sitting below and a VPOC here to clean up at around 52.45 to 48. And below that, we have another handful 2-3-day balance below at 52.10. So those are kind of your three main areas of interest here into tomorrow as well as early next week. I want to highlight before we kind of go into pathing a little bit, just our overall move that we saw at our open today, Globex, and then through our regular trading hours. We did look up into our initial first measured move target of 53.70. This was highlighted for our newsletter participants as well as those who are in the Discord. Should have been very familiar with this being our first bullish target. As we tested in there, we instantly saw a pretty aggressive sell at the open and traded back into our primary balance. This is quite a textbook play where a lookup fails. We look back into our current balance and value, and you should assume that we're going to see a full oscillation of said balance and value. So this kind of early to mid-afternoon kind of bounce and rest makes sense. Where we saw our large expansion was in the last hour, 2 hours of the day as we traded back down through our 53.05 pivot and filled our gap we talked about before from the initial kind of last Wednesday early morning push off data and then into FOMC continuation. So with this close on the gap fill and kind of in no man's land, most of this node structure that you're seeing here is pulled from the last time we were up in this area in March. As you see, if I go left, so there is not a ton in here. I do still want to kind of rely on the middle of this node. We did have some two-sided trading that occurred here on that last Wednesday, as well as a little bit of a pivot today. This 52.90 to 52.95 it still is important to me, and I'm going to use this as our kind of intermediary pivot before we look up into our primary structural pivot here towards 53.05. So what you're really looking for is interactions around this 95 and then up through 305. So this little 10-point range right here. If buyers can see a test back through 95 and over 305 and build here, we should expect the exact opposite of what we saw today, where we fail above, look through balance. The idea here is this going to fail below? And then we look for a re-oscillation and test back up into our 333, 330, anywhere in this primary kind of value pocket here is your main look. If buyers fail to regain this zone and put pressure on this LVN, we should expect that we continue down until we reach this past 3-day balance, clean up this VPOC at 52.45. If you can see on the chart here, I did mention this is our first balance to the downside. We should assume that there are still active buyers in this node. But any continued lower highs, if we turn 5260 back into kind of our sell side resistance, and we see that value drop down, we can assume that a large degree order book shift has occurred, and it makes sense to look further down. Now, I don't expect this trade into 5210 to happen tomorrow. It is definitely possible. I would not call it probable, but into early next week, if we do see quite a bearish day where we come down another 50 points into this edge, a cleaner test back down towards 5200, or like I've talked about, our 5210 into this auction does make sense. So that's kind of short and sweet there. Pretty straightforward. Is, can we regain our pivot, put pressure on this LVN, lower highs? We should expect to clean up down through 45 to 48. Continuation, we look back towards 5210, down into 5200, kind of nestled in this node. And with the buy side, if we can accept back through this LVN, we're going to look for continued oscillations of this upper node. For bulls here, you really want to see this hold. You want this to be our low and to punish all of these sellers under 95. If we fail to do so, the probability of this 45 trade is quite high. Like I said, in one day, I'm not putting a super high probability on another 70-80 point day, but it is possible. Your tell is going to be reactionary here at 45 if we really don't see a bid step in. Or if we do, if this 60 maintains as our lower high and we regain the sell side value to push down here, I might adjust my kind of intraday thinkings on this area, but that's really what I'm looking for. What happens at 45, what happens at 30, and using 95 and 305 as our two kind of check areas. You can be patient if we're trading in between those areas. Even here, to take a long, we should get a look up and a strong retest, and that's still 30 points. Same idea on the downside. These 15 points from 75 through 60, it can be a little uncertain, but a strong retest here, and we can still take about 30 points plus down to this lower edge, if not just the 15 into 45. So definitely plenty of room for points to be captured. Plenty of good areas for retests, so we can really take those pressures and we make sure we're not off sides, right? Quite easy to stay on sides as long as we're patient and really just play your trend. Intraday on our lower time frames, if we're still putting in lower highs and lower lows, we need to respect that, and we should not be anticipating longs until we see this taken out and we start to put in those higher highs and higher lows. So be patient with those. Still a lot of good opportunity in either direction. We really just need to check this pivot area and this low. Last thing I want to go talk about really quick. So obviously NVIDIA's earnings quite bullish yesterday. I saw this initial push up. It was still quite bullish on the day today, really maintaining a higher gap. We can go look at the chart really quick. I don't have much to say on it, but gap up was supported. We saw an intraday high put in around the midday and a sell back down into balance, close on POC for it, but still really maintaining and holding above this gap. Monster move. Yeah, $100 is just a massive move. But what I want to go look at here is Apple. So this is a year-to-date chart, daily chart on the screen right now. We can see through early May, still respecting and holding above this earnings gap put in, but there is a lot of interesting structure, especially with this close. So want to kind of look at this as a single distribution here, and then this distribution underneath. Obviously, there's a little bit more granularity there with some strong LVNs here at 83, but really viewing this as a double distribution. And if we pull a profile just on this post earnings look up, you can see it is pretty well split. This looks at more of a triple, but you have an upper area here defined through here at 87 where our close was today, and then some kind of poor structure below. Like I said, there is some things to look at, above 83 and below, but really looking at this as a double distribution. And if we see that continued weakness in the market, we talked about on ES invalidating this flow, lower high on 95, and then our secondary lower high watching for around 60. it makes sense for Apple to do a similar thing where we test down towards this 83, lower high around 85, and then clean this up towards 80 and with our gap below. If we can hold, we have a lot of room back up into 190, towards 192, 193. So some really good kind of potential Apple trades here as well. And structure is quite good to lean on for overall tech kind of bullishness or bearishness into Friday and Sunday. I won't be looking at NVDA too much. I won't be looking at Tesla too much because of the Elon stuff. A lot of internal catalysts going on within those names. But Apple and as well as Microsoft here, really showing some interesting structure and some room to the downside if we see that continued weakness. As you can see, Microsoft here as well, closing just down on this primary balanced edge on the top side versus where Apple is through its upper balance and closing kind of in between the two, but very much of a similar double distribution through this early May, with a gap being observed here as well. So just a little bit of structure to watch out for on your underlines. Last little quick rundown, just again, like to repeat myself, but 95 to 305. Do we put pressure into this lower edge and through the LVN? If yes, and we can clear the LVN, expect a retest to occur and look for a node oscillation. Failure at our lows after a failure at 95 should see a trade back towards 45. And if 60 remains sell side value, then we can look deeper into our structure below. That is all I have for you guys. Make sure to please come check out our intraday live streams where we'll be talking about this structure and these movements real time. Can help navigate through some of these pivots and into targets. That is all. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys, and I will see you next week.